T. You're not my soulmate, but you'll do in a pinch. Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance, and I hope you are too. Yes, another tag. The end of the year is filled with them. I know tags are all over Booktube right now, but I'm not just hopping on a train. I'm doing a tag that I was tagged in last year, but by the time I got my shit together, it was just too late in the year to do the winter essentials tag. Now, I know winter typically in the Northern Hemisphere lasts through March, but to me, the winter essentials tag is more of a holiday tag. So I wanted to make sure that I got it done this year well before Christmas, especially since I actually will be tagging folks in this one. I was tagged by the lovely Jem over at Bookish Gems. Hi, Jem. I also told myself that I would mention the original creator of this tag, but I totally forgot to do that, but I will link them down below as well as Jem's channel. As you may or may not know, I haven't been doing as many tags over the past couple of months just because I've kind of found the videos that I really enjoy making. But every once in a while, a tag is fun, and it's just another excuse to talk about books. And I think this is a really good tag as a precursor to the end of the year videos that are coming up, specifically the favorites of the year video that, of course, everybody does. I am no exception, but I think the questions in this particular tag is just kind of a teaser to the favorites of the year videos that are going to be coming up. So I think that's just another good reason to do this tag. Enough blather from me. Let's get into it. The first prompt is Crackling Fire. Who is your favorite character that was cold at the beginning of the book but warmed up towards the end of the book? Now, what video of mine is complete without a mention of the Women's Prize for Fiction? So the character I chose for this question is Saloni from The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. The Bandit Queens was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year. It was one of my favorites. I absolutely loved it. It follows Geeta, a woman in India whose husband went missing 5 years before, and she kind of has the reputation in her small village that she murdered him, and she's never denied it, even though she knows that that's not what happens. There's a bunch of shenanigans that goes on because some of the women in the village who have been abused by their husbands now come to Geeta to ask for her to do the same thing to their husbands as she ostensibly did to her own. There's some really wonderful themes to the book. There's a lot of humor to the book, and Saloni is a childhood friend that Geeta had, and over the years they've kind of gone in separate directions and they've grown to hate each other. And then, of course, as the story goes on, they start to learn a little bit more about what happened between them, and Saloni starts to warm up to Geeta towards the end. And I love their relationship, as well as the book. And if you haven't read Bandit Queens by now, definitely recommend it. The next prompt is Snowflakes. What is a book that you read with unique characters in it? Here we go. Women's Prize for Fiction again. I have to say Pod by Laylene Paul. This was also one of my favorites. This one was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and man, this book got a lot of trash talk across Booktube, and it just bummed me out. I love this book so much, and the unique characters, if you don't know by now, were sea creatures. All of the characters in this book were marine animals. The main characters were spinner dolphins and bottlenose dolphins. The main gist of the story was different beings trying to get past their differences to work together towards a better future. I mean, that's a super simplistic overview of it, but it was absolutely beautifully told. There was also commentary, of course, the environment and climate change and the effects it has on all beings. I absolutely loved it, and I was thrilled that I was able to draw from this book again to answer this question, so yay Pod. The next prompt is Gingerbread Family. See, this is a holiday tag. Am I right? Which fictional family would you want to be a part of? This one was super easy. Definitely Iona Iverson's family. I read Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting by Claire Pooley, and I was absolutely taken by surprise by how much I love this book. So good. Takes place in England, follows a 50-something-year-old strong smart woman. It follows her as she becomes unlikely friends with different characters on her commuter train that have nothing to do with each other, but they're brought together after this one incident. And we have themes of found family. It's just a lovely, lovely story with a wonderful message, and I absolutely loved Iona, and I would like for her to adopt me. I'm just kidding, Mom. The next prompt is Blizzard. What is a book that had you confused the whole time? So easy to answer this question because this happened very recently. Dead Astronauts by Jeff Vandermeer. I'm pretty sure I talked about this in my mid-month wrap-up for November. This isn't a book that I normally would have picked up. Jeff Vandermeer writes some weird stuff, but this was for my work book club, and I DNF'd it before I even got to page 20. I think I read 12 pages of it. I felt like it was written in a foreign language. I didn't understand what was going on, and more importantly, I didn't want to understand. So, too confusing, and I didn't care. The next prompt is gift giving. Again, with the holiday theme. What was the last book that was gifted to you? Well, the last book that somebody gave to me was The List of Suspicious Things by Jenny Godfrey. This was in my goodie bag from the Women's Prize for Fiction. Of course it was. If you're new to my channel, I actually went to the Women's Prize for Fiction Festival, live festival event in London, England in June. Had the time of my life. I have a vlog of it. Maybe I'll link that below if I'm so inclined. But this was in the goodie bag that you get at the door, and I haven't read it yet. I am not familiar with this author, but I am excited to read it. It's a little bit of a chunker, so not sure when I'll get to it, but it's coming out in 2024. It says it would be easy to say that it all started with the missing women, but actually it began with when Margaret Thatcher became prime minister. A woman in charge of the country just isn't right. They're not made for it, my Auntie Jean said on the day the election results were announced. As if the last lot weren't bad enough, she's the beginning of the end for Yorkshire, and I'll tell you why and all. She was bustling about our small kitchen, vigorously rewiping surfaces I had already wiped. I was sat at the table in my brown and orange school uniform, shelling peas into a colander on the chipped yellow Formica top, popping fresh ones into my mouth whenever she wasn't looking. I wanted to point out that, like Margaret Thatcher, Auntie Jean was also a woman, but Auntie Jean hated being interrupted mid-flow, and it was just the two of us, meaning there was no escape for me from her opinions, of which there were many. Moving on. Next prompt is Snowball. What is the biggest book you've ever read? And I'm guessing that's the longest or the most page count. Even though it says ever read, I'm trying to use the books that I read this past year, 2023. If we were talking about ever, it would have to be Ken Follett's World Without End, which was over 1,200 pages. But the biggest page count for this year was Swan Song by Robert McCammon. And that was right around 960. Every page was a delight. That will definitely be on my favorites list this year. Absolutely loved it. If you've been watching me for a while, you know that a book over 500 pages, I'm probably going to complain about a little bit. But this one, it didn't take away from the story. It didn't feel like it dragged. It was absolutely a stellar story. Quick synopsis. It's a post-apocalyptic story. It tells about how we survive after World War III. Think of Stephen King's The Stand, but instead of an illness, it's a nuclear fallout. And the characters are fantastic. The war of good versus evil just plays out beautifully. It's a heck of a ride. Highly recommend. The next prompt is wrapping paper. What is your most beat up book? And I'll have to show that to you. Easily, it's my copy. One of my copies, I should say, of To Kill a Mockingbird. I collect different editions of To Kill a Mockingbird. It's one of my all-time favorite books. It's the only book really that I reread. And I found this one at a secondhand store. And it's got the picture from the movie. You've got Scout and Jim in the picture. And yeah, it's battered. It is a very old edition. It's even missing the first 20 pages. But actually, I didn't find this in a secondhand store. My husband did a few years back. If you've been watching me a while, you know the story. But a few years back, for my birthday, my husband sent emails to some of my closest family and friends asking them to pick a book that they love and that they think that I would love. And then to write a little note saying why they think that I would love that book. And this is the book that my mom picked for me. I ended up getting, I want to say 12 or 13 books that my friends or family recommended to me with beautiful notes from each of them. It was fantastic. It was really wonderful. Yeah, this is the one that has seen better days. The next prompt is Christmas lights. What is a book you own that has many different colors on the cover? I'm going to have to do a little bit of a hunt. I'm going to go with this one. This one's beautiful. This is The Boys from Biloxi by John Grisham. I haven't read this one yet, but beautiful cover. It's got quite a few colors on the cover. For most of the last 100 years, Biloxi was known for its beaches, resorts, and seafood industry, but it had a darker side. It was also notorious for corruption and vice, everything from gambling, prostitution, bootleg liquor, and drugs to contract killings. The vice was controlled by a small cabal of mobsters, many of them rumored to be members of the Dixie Mafia. Keith Rudy and Hugh Malco grew up in Biloxi in the 60s and were childhood friends. Oh, well, that's the hook for me. In the 60s, childhood friends, as well as Little League All-Stars. But as teenagers, their lives took them in different directions. Keith's father became a legendary prosecutor determined to clean up the coast. Hugh's father became the boss of Biloxi's criminal underground. Keith went to law school and followed in his father's footsteps. Hugh preferred the nightlife and worked in his father's clubs. The two families were headed for a showdown, one that would ultimately happen in a courtroom. So someday I will get to it. I love John Grisham, and that is an absolutely gorgeous cover. The next prompt is ice skating. What is a book that had a plot that was all over the place? This one also was easy because I talked about it recently. I'll have to say Florida Roadkill by Tim Dorsey. Oh my goodness. All over the place. If I hadn't read the back, I wouldn't have known really what the plot was. But basically, this is a book about a bunch of different characters. And I mean a bunch. And they're wacky and weird. You're in Florida, so of course. And they're all after the same suitcase that's filled with $5 million of stolen insurance money. Said suitcase wasn't even mentioned really in any detail until about 2/3 of the way through the book. And up until that point, you're just following each of these characters, kind of getting to know them. As weird stuff happens, they do weird stuff, just crazy shenanigans, wackiness galore. And while it started off fun and kind of adventurous and entertaining, it just got to be too much. There's a ton of violence and just craziness that goes on. The next prompt is Christmas tree, and the question is, who is your favorite character of all time? Again, I kind of want to keep my answers to the books that I read in 2023. If I were to say all time, I would easily say Cyril Avery from Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne. That was probably my favorite of the year of 2021. Amazing. But the character that sticks out for me this year, would have to be Joshua from Swan Song. He's a former professional football player. I think he gets injured and he can't play football anymore, so he becomes a professional wrestler, well, semi-professional wrestler. He's divorced. He has kind of an estranged relationship with his kids. He's really kind of going nowhere. And then, of course, World War III hits, and he meets this young 9-year-old girl, and he is kind of given the life's purpose of protecting her. She's super important. And I just love how he is completely loyal and courageous in this task of protecting her, that I just grew to love him. It's as simple as that. I love him. Next prompt is The Star. What is a book you look forward to rereading every year? There's only one book I reread, and it's one that I have read every couple of years. I try to do it every year, but it doesn't always end up that way. But I've been doing it for a really long time, and that's To Kill a Mockingbird. I read it around Christmas time. It's just one of those books that I read as a kid, I fell in love with. It's stuck with me all my life, and that's why I collect the different editions for them. And while I'm not a rereader, that one is just one that I can easily reread and enjoy the same, if not more, every time I reread it. The final prompt is Snowball Fight, and that is to tag 5 people. The last tag I didn't tag anybody just because I feel like there's an undue pressure and I just don't want to do that to anybody. But this one specifically gives me a number of 5. so it just kind of makes it easy. So here's who I'm tagging. A couple of regulars that I've tagged in the past. The lovely Jim from Gem of Books, the super cool Leslie from The Nerdy Narrative, and then I'm going to tag a couple of people that I've never tagged before that I have been watching pretty religiously for a while. I'm going to tag Olly from Criminally. I'm going to tag Michaela from Michaela Reads. And I'm going to tag Katey Flowers from Katey Flowers. Absolutely no pressure for anybody. I just thought it would be fun. If you're in the market of doing a holiday tag, I would love to see your answers. But that is it for this tag. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're not a booktuber, I would love to hear your answers. If you can comment down below, or you can just say hi down in the doodly-doo. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be wonderful. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.